Hello, Tia. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Let's go straight to the point. What's up with the poop?
What's up with the poop?
Yeah.
Okay, so for everyone that's listening, I'm in the gut health world, so all I do is talk about poop, basically. But I think let's take it back a notch a little bit and share how I got into the world of poop.
The world of poop. I like that.
Yeah, it is a world of poop, right? Because it's like literally we can tell how healthy we are based on our poop and what's actually going on in our body. So I think for me, taking everything back a notch, maybe like 7 years ago, I was kind of going back and forth with my health a lot. Like I was struggling with so many digestive issues. Like we're never really taught this stuff, right? We're never really taught about like food. We're never taught about like stress levels. We're never taught about like poo. Literally, we're just never taught about it. And for me, I was kind of on this journey where like I was working in a very, very stressful high corporate job. I was working in the events industry and like I was barely pooping. Like,
was it here in Dubai?
It was a bit of a mix, right? So I used to live in Australia, and in Oz it kind of started to rear its ugly head where I was very stressed out. I was struggling with quote unquote IBS. You know, we can pull apart that word later because I don't believe in it. And I was going back and forth to doctors in Australia and, you know, getting cameras in places which you don't really want cameras in. And I was just getting these like flippant kind of remarks of, you know, there's nothing wrong with you, everything's fine. And I was like, well, clearly it's not, because I'm bloated all the time. Like I'm having skin breakouts. I'm struggling with my bowel movements. Like there's stuff going on. And like I was miserable. Like I was so miserable. And I think there's so many people that don't realize that being able to poop and actually releasing toxins out of our body is like the ticket. It's like your highway to health. Literally.
I mean, just from my own perspective, you know, when you wake up in the morning and you don't have time, let's say, to go for a nice poop, and you have to carry it all day with you, like you're miserable.
You're miserable.
Yeah.
And like we see that a lot with our clients as well, because like I think one of the biggest issues as well with women is there's a lot of women walking around with hormonal problems, right? And they're getting PMS, they're having thyroid issues, they're having all sorts of mood swings, you know, PCOS, estrogen dominance, all these sorts of things. Like if we can actually get ourselves pooping properly, like we're able to actually detoxify these things, right? Because when we're able to poop, and I'm talking like 1 to 2 times a day, like most people that land in my world are pooping like 3 times a week, right? And I'm just like, oh my god, what? If even, you know, every 3 days, that's 2 poops a week, right? 2.5 poops a week, like, right?
Is it predominantly women?
It's predominantly women. Yeah, I mean, I only work with women.
Oh, okay.
And they come into our world and they're like, I've been told it's normal to only poop, you know, every 3 days. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because like if we think about it, right, and like we can go very in depth in terms of like the bacteria that's in our gut and the reason why we need to poop all the time, but if you think about it, like we put food into us, we then process said food, our body then starts to detoxify the things that are in our body that we don't actually need, chemicals for women, also estrogen at certain periods of our cycle, and then that needs to vacate the building, because if it doesn't vacate the building, then the liver gets overloaded, right? And the liver then comes into play, and it's like, oh shit, there's so many toxins floating around in this chick's bloodstream right now. I need to work even harder. And that's then when things like brain fog, sluggishness, migraines, you know, people just feeling like they've been hit by a bus start to come into play, because all those toxins are being recirculated into the body. Shit is right.
Literally shit.
Literally shit, right? And like, I think it's just the most underrated thing ever. And like everybody needs to be looking at their shit, and everybody needs to be understanding that your shit equals your highway to health. Once you can get that moving, and once you can get your body detoxifying, you're going to feel so much better.
Does it have to do with a lack of fiber they are eating, or is it more than just food?
There's so many things that can contribute to constipation, but we can we can dive into that. But also there's the other end of the spectrum, right? Some people enter into our world and they've got diarrhea. And it's like they're pooping 6 times a day and it's just running through them like lava. And it's like, oh my God, that's also hell. Like I remember I had a client who finished up with us and was like, oh my God, I can't believe I don't feel like I need to shit myself in the supermarket anymore. And I'm like, how is this our world? Like, and there's so many people walking around with these sorts of issues. But talking constipation wise, like, yes, lack of fiber for sure is going to come into play, right? But also dehydration, which is a big one. Also gut bugs that are unhappy. So in our body, we're actually made up of more gut bugs than we are human cells, right?
How do you say gut bugs in a different way?
Like bacteria, viruses, like all these sorts of things, like yeast.
The ones that we need, yeah.
Good and bad, right? So our microbiome is basically like an ecosystem. So we're walking, talking, living ecosystems. Like we actually need to learn how to live in a symbiotic relationship with these gut bugs, because when they are good and when they're thriving and when we're in a state of like equilibrium with them, when the gut bugs and the bad bugs are both kind of on par, we're feeling good. And when we're feeding those gut bugs, they're like, fuck yes. And they're making us feel good. And they're giving us energy. And they're helping us poop. And they're, you know, preventing chronic diseases. But then what happens is through it, diet, lifestyle, emotional stress, things that are going on in our world, if those gut bugs then, and it's called in poop terms dysbiosis, right, which means that there's an overgrowth of the bad bacteria, so they're being overfed and they're starting to overgrow, that's when things start to come into play, right? So constipation then, and we see it quite a lot with our clients, is it can be parasites. It can also be like an overgrowth of mold, and like literally if you've been exposed to mold in your home, that's in your gut. That is living in your gut. That's a mycotoxin.
Is it from breathing the mold?
You breathe it in. So we are a product of our environment, right? So if you think about it, like we have clients that have like got moldy showers, and they come to us and they're like, Tia, I've done everything. I'm like, have you got mold in your body? And we run the labs and their mold is through the roof. And I'm like, no wonder, because your body's so stressed out. Like, and there's all these toxins flying around in it. You're not able to poop, or you're not able to X, Y, and Z, or you have eczema, or you have migraines, or you have whatever. And it's just that body is in this like emergency state when these things are in it, that it can't heal without the help of other things.
So what are the other things? There's going to be a lot, I guess.
There's a lot, right? So we kind of work with like 5 different pillars, right? So the first one would be testing. So the first thing that we do, and this is not just your average poop test that your doctor does, this is a GI map. So it's 6,000 times more sensitive than the average test, right? And what it does is you take your poop, you give it to us, we send it to the lab, and...
I want to hear more about this, because you explained the process to me, but like, let's explain it to people who are listening. Because the lab is not here in Dubai.
No, the lab is in...
To actually ship it.
Yeah.
You ship your shit somewhere else.
Ship your shit. It's like high-flying shit, right? I sometimes like to think about it in the sense of like, I'm putting my poop on first class and it's flying over somewhere to be analysed.
So there is a plane full of shit somewhere.
There's a plane full of shit.
Nice.
And yes, feces. So what do you want me to talk about? You want me to tell you how to do the poop test?
Yeah. Oh, I'm actually interested. You told it to me, but yeah.
So basically we send out a test kit, which you poop into a tray, you take the poop, you put it into a little sample vial, you shake the vial. Yeah, delicious, right? And then you put that in the fridge, you call the DHL man, he comes to your door and you hand him your poop. And then that gets
does he know what's that?
I mean, it says human specimen.
Oh, okay.
So he probably knows that it's high-flying shit, right? So then it goes off on the plane, it lands in the lab kit, and then they analyze it. So they're checking it for things like parasites, Candida overgrowth, which is yeast overgrowth, dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in the bacteria. Also, we can check like your immune system functioning, right? Because you're looking at 60 to 70% of your immune system lives in your gut, right? So it's just behind the the 1 cell thick lining of your gut, right? So this is why there's so many people now that have autoimmune diseases as well, right? Because their gut is impaired and that's been triggered. So we then can also look in terms of females, how well they're detoxing estrogen and is there problems with that sort of stuff. So you're getting a kind of full spectrum on what's actually happening with those lovely gut bugs that are hanging out in your body. And then from there, that's our kind of first pillar where we then look at, okay, what do we need to do to detoxify these things? And we will use natural supplements. So we usually work with like a 12 to 16 week protocol for our clients. And my team, who are functional nutritionists, they are trained in looking at these labs with a fine tooth comb and like seeing patterns based on symptoms. And so then the first phase will be kind of like prepping the body for it. So we'll work on opening up your detox pathways. So we got to get you pooping in that first phase, right? Because if you're not pooping and you start to kill off these bugs, then all those toxins are recirculated, right? And then you're going to feel like shit. So we got to get you pooping. We got to get you sweating because those toxins are going to be released through your sweat and your skin. We got to get your lymph moving, right? So all of these things are like prepping your body and also your liver. So we want to lean into liver loving foods. Then we want to lean into like dandelion root tea and things like cruciferous vegetables. So broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts. Those, I know everyone hates Brussels sprouts.
I love them actually.
Oh, so do I.
I love them. So it's not only about supplements.
No.
It's you literally tell people what to eat, how to eat it, how much of it. And it's like fine-tuned to the person individually, yeah?
It's fine-tuned to what we have found in the labs, right? So, for example, when I was going through my own gut stuff, I had E. coli, I had a parasite, and I had an overgrowth of yeast in my gut, right? So I had to go on a specific diet to support me with starving the bacteria. So you want to like starve the bacteria first, and then you want to kill it. So you basically take away its feeding source, which is usually sugar, refined carbohydrates. So you're talking like white bread, you're talking about all that starchy stuff, and you want to then lean into like whole foods, right? So literally food that like comes from the ground or comes from
real
whole foods, not processed shite. Like,
so you talk to people about how to differentiate between processed and not processed food.
Totally.
Because processed food is full of chemicals and
totally
people are still not aware.
Totally. And that's the thing, it's like that's kind of the first step, is also that awareness around what's actually in our food. And like the awareness of my body is so full of toxins right now. The gut bugs are all over the place. And if we're constantly putting food in us that is also covered in an absolute shed load of chemicals, or if we're constantly using, especially for women, if we're using makeup that includes chemicals, deodorant, if we're spraying the living daylights out of our home, if we're using candles that are full of like toxic stuff,
laundry detergent,
like
shampoo,
all of these
body
things,
gel,
all of these things. And like it's also like it needs to be a phased approach, right? Because you can't just bring someone into your world and be like, you have to change everything, because people will panic, right? So like it's a process. So the first thing is like, let's get you into eating good food and let's work with that. And then let's, in the first phase, include supplements that boost your nutrient density, right? And then prep your body to detox. And then when we go into detox, we go a little bit stricter with the food, right? So you then might be on an anti-parasite protocol, or you might be on an anti-candida protocol, or something along those lines, food-wise. And that's when then we kill off these bugs, right? So we send in the antimicrobial supplements, and they go in, and they start to kill everything off.
Like an army.
It's an army, and it needs to be, because like depending on where we're at with our certain levels, and also depending on how well the body actually copes with, like how well your liver is coping with all these sorts of things, is so critical. So like I'll tell you a story about me. Like I used to be a booze hound. Like I used to love to drink back in the day, and I never understood that was making my liver more and more sluggish, because I was just putting toxin after toxin in it. And like no wonder I got so sick as well, because like I would binge drink at the weekend, and I would like hammer my body, and then I would be so stressed out all the time that my body never got a chance to actually heal. So then when it came down to it, like, and I thought this was going to be such a simple journey of healing my gut, I was like, oh damn, this is a big shift, because you have to ultimately change who you are and what you believe in order to actually welcome in a new version of yourself that is quote unquote healed, right?
And you have to kill the old version to have the new
100%.
version, right? Can you tell people what's with alcohol, why it's so bad?
Well, it's just the load on the liver. Like, if you think about it in the sense of like, it also messes up with your stomach acid, and stomach acid is also your first line of defense, right? So when we have low stomach acid, which can be depleted from things like alcohol, which can be also depleted by like high stress, usually people that have like acid reflux or have like burning sensations in their gut, they actually have low stomach acid, not high stomach acid. So for me, I ended up with 6 stomach ulcers. And I'll tell you this story because like I was on site down in Abu Dhabi.
How old were you?
How old was I going through this?
Yeah.
So this was maybe 4 years ago.
Shit.
So I was 28. How old am I now? I'm 33 now. 28, 29, give or take. And I was down working in Abu Dhabi. I was doing back-to-back events. I was working maybe 16-hour days, right? And I was stressed as fuck. And I had a bunch of stomach problems, right? So like I was just crippled all the time. I had cystic acne all over my face. Like my hormones were all over the shop. Like I was just in pieces, and I was pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And I remember we had just come to the end of like the big event that we did. So me and the team were like, cool, we're going to go and we're going to get hammered, because that's what you did in the events industry. You worked your butt off and then you went and you got hammered. And like I was probably drinking straight vodka. I was doing shots. I was doing all these sorts of things. And at that point, I didn't realize I had 6 stomach ulcers at that time. So you think about like, when you think about it, I was pouring straight vodka into a stomach that had holes in it and had cysts and had ulcers on it. Then like I couldn't get out of bed the next day. Like I had to go to site the next day. I was green. I was vomiting constantly. And like, it was at that point where I was just like, what are you doing with your life? What are you doing with your life?
And you probably thought you were just hangover, right?
I just thought I was hungover, because like I was always this person that would get a bit nauseous after, you know, after a night out or whatever. And then like the pinnacle for me was when I was at home, and I think it was probably somewhere around New Year's Eve. It was that like that time frame. So the event had finished at like early December, right? And I had stomach ulcers at this time, but I wasn't aware of it. And then it was probably like a week later, I was given a week off work to recover. And I remember waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, like screaming with the pain in my stomach. Like I thought someone had lit a match in my stomach, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And like Zaev wasn't at home. So like I had to crawl down to a taxi and be like, take me to the emergency room. And I got there and I was like buckled over with my stomach. And I remember like they put a camera down, or they did some sort of scan thing, and they were like, oh yeah, you got 6 stomach ulcers, but it's nothing to worry about. And I thought, are you fucking kidding me? I was like, how is this like not something to worry about? Or like this whole flippant, you've got IBS, when you clearly feel like you've been hit by a bus every day. You're clearly struggling. And we just get like fobbed off. And it's just like, oh, there's something wrong with you, you know, go sort that out, go see a shrink, go, like, I used to get that all the time. I have clients that come to me and they're like, Tia, I'm going crazy because like I'm being gaslit, or I'm being told that there's nothing wrong with me and that I'm a hypochondriac. And like this boils my blood, because like we then run lab tests for these people and their gut is fucked. And I'm like, no wonder you feel like shit, because your autoimmune markers are up, because you've got candida growing in your gut, because you're not digesting your food properly, because of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, how can we now start to make this shift that our gut is the highway to everything? Like 90% of diseases, chronic diseases, stem from a gut imbalance. Like we have got to take this shit seriously.
So is this issue with the doctors that they are not educated on this matter, or they know it, they just don't care, or?
Yeah, I think it's that they're not educated on it, because I think that is a very closed system, right? And I think that like the methods that we do and the functional medicine, which looks at like the whole person from a holistic aspect and then looks at like what else is going on, it's labeled as quack.
That's what I was about to say. Is it because doctors say this is a holistic approach, so this is not medicine?
Correct. Yeah. So because all they've ever been educated on is, you know, the body in separate ways. It's like if you have a problem with your arm, you've got a problem with your arm. You know what I mean? Or if you've got a problem with acne, that's a skin problem. It's not an anywhere else problem. So it's isolated. Whereas when we come at it from the approach of like, let's look at the whole body system. What's actually happening? How's your gut? How are your stress levels? How's your diet? Have you been exposed to, you know, trauma? How's your self-esteem? Where are you at? Are you isolated? Like when you come at it from that like whole person approach, as opposed to you've got a problem with that, let's just fix that. It's like this domino effect then, right? Because like one leads to the other, to the other, to the other. And like once we target things with some of our clients, when we start to target the gut, like all these high vibe things start to come into their world again, like landing promotions out of the blue because they finally have the confidence again, because they're starting to feel better again. Or another lady who hasn't had a libido for 6 years is suddenly like, oh my God, I'm able to have sex again. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what happens when you focus on the whole person, not just I can see nothing wrong. You know, there's nothing wrong with you. You must be crazy.
Because they treat only the physical symptoms.
They only treat the physical symptoms. And they also, their only tactic is medication. Whereas like, I got a toolkit full of a bajillion things that if one thing doesn't work, we look at the other thing and we look at the other thing and da-da-da-da-da. So you look at your lifestyle, you look at your diet, you look at all those things that I just mentioned. And then you put the pieces of the puzzle together, because we're multifaceted beings. We're not just, here's a pill that'll fix that. It's like, I've got emotions, I've got feelings, I've got thoughts, I have energy, I have food that, like, you've got all these parts of you.
And a pill that has 30 side effects that create another issues.
And this was the thing, like when I was put on the medication for my stomach ulcers, that was then causing low stomach acid, which left me open to parasites. And then I caught a parasite. So, and this is the vicious cycle that people get stuck in, right? They go to their doctor, they're given antibiotics for their gut. That then depletes all their good gut bugs and then causes the other bad bugs to start to thrive, right? Because it takes between a year to 18 months for the gut to repair after one course of antibiotics.
Shit.
That's a lot. That's a lot. And most people like I'm not going to sit here and diss antibiotics because they've saved so many people, and like we've all been on them. They've saved so many
They have
things.
a place in the world.
They have such a great place in the world, but they are the most over prescribed thing. And ultimately, sometimes, do you know what? Sometimes I feel like when people go to the doctor and they complain about something, sometimes they just might need a hug. Sometimes they might need just someone to listen to them, someone to vent, or they might just need to eat a vegetable. Like, I think when it comes, and we're built in this society where it's like the doctor fixes me, I don't fix me. And I feel like there's a massive disconnect then between our physical bodies and healing, because we are like, doctor heals, therefore I go to doctor. I have nothing to do with said healing. And it's actually like, well, how can I take my power back, and how can I reclaim my own health by putting practices into place?
But don't you think it's changing, that it's on the rise, that so especially younger people are like thinking more holistic and working on themselves physically, mentally?
Totally. It's a movement, and I'm here for that freaking movement. Like, let's fly that flag, because the more that we can learn self-awareness and healing, the more that we're actually healing everybody else that comes after us. You know what I mean? And it's like we're changing things. We're changing things for the better. Like we're we're now going to these retreats and we're talking about our emotions and we're learning about nutrition, and there is definitely a rise, and like it is exciting. It's so exciting.
Yeah, I like to see that. I like to see even so many younger people telling me about they go to therapy.
Yeah.
And eating healthy, trying to eat healthy, which is quite difficult because you have so many sources. Nobody knows where to start.
Totally.
But just the effort of trying to eat healthy and looking for options already makes a huge difference. Have you heard of a book, Feeding You Lies, from Vani Hari, I believe is her name?
I follow Vani Hari. She's amazing. She's the
food
food babe, right?
Yes,
on
Instagram.
Yeah. She was in one of my lectures. She's amazing.
You have to read her book, Feeding You Lies, because I'm quite big on processed food and chemicals in the food and food ingredients, learning how to read ingredients, which I think should be taught in schools.
Agreed.
Which probably not going to be because school is feeding kids the shit. But this book is incredible because she explains in details how the food industry, how the chemicals industry was trying to fuck her. And like legit.
Yeah.
Like they were trying to take her down because she was exposing, and she still is exposing. If you go to her Instagram, the food babe,
she's amazing.
She's trying to expose all the processed foods, all the chemicals they put in, especially in US, because comparing to Europe, US ingredients list of the same items are like double, and they're like shit inside that can literally kill you in like huge amounts. And it's amazing. Like the book, highly recommend. It's great. You're gonna love it if you are into this stuff.
I follow her. She's amazing.
She's
and I just love, like, she's just actively taking them down. But it also, like, it's scary because then you think, you know, when you come into this world, you think that the world is working for you, you know, and you think that everybody is telling you and giving you good advice. And then when you start to see stuff like this, like, it rocks you, like, it changes your belief system. It's scary, but it's also really empowering because then you're like, oh, I'm going to go do my own thing and I'm going to learn how to heal my body, and but you have to fit out, you know, you have to fit out against the crowd, and that's really hard. You have to say no to certain things. You have to, like, forge your own path. And, like, that's what I've been doing for the last few years, because if I hadn't, I'd be so sick still. So sick. Well,
you have to. Like, when you learn how to stop giving a fuck what other people think, it sets you free. Like, the whole new world opens up to you. You suddenly can do so many things because you don't look at, like, oh, what would they think? They would judge me. Like, people going to judge you regardless. You will always find someone who likes what you are doing and someone who doesn't. And if you will try to please everyone, you are on a highway to hell. Personal hell. So I've been there, and I believe everybody been there.
Oh yeah.
So just don't fucking care. Do your thing. Even if it's the bad thing, even if it's the wrong thing, at least you will learn something from it.
Totally.
But at least it was your decision and not decision of the society, of decision of your friends or of your family. Because especially, like, I feel like people closest to you, your family, your friends that love you, they project their insecurities and their beliefs on you. And they do it from the place of love. They want the best for you, but it's the best that's in their eyes the best for you.
Exactly.
Is it the best for you? Is it actually the best for you?
Exactly. It's like expanding your own consciousness, right? And it's like, yes, they're coming at it from a place of love, but it might be limited. Their level of advice or whatever might be limited to what they know and what they believe.
It is limited. It's always limited.
Exactly. So then it's like, how can we go about doing things our own way? And that is the most empowering journey ever, is like doing healing your own way. Because there's also, and this is what grinds my gears a lot as well on Instagram, there's also, especially in the gut healing world, they're like, take these apple cider vinegar gummies, or take these, you know, super green shakes and they'll heal everything. And I'm just like, fucking hell. Like, that's what I see that quite often in even the holistic world, that like supplements are the new quick fix solution, the new fad, when ultimately what we have to try and do is actually fall in love with creating a life that we love, right? Instead of just supplementing the living daylights out of it. And like, I think that was a really big lesson for me, because like I used to think like that. I used to be trying to find the quick fix constantly. And then it actually took me leaving my job, calming down my nervous system, like understanding how that controls everything, and then trying to forge a life where I was actually enjoying what I was building, as opposed to just buying into hustle mode and, you know, this masculine dominant world that's like go, 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 go. That's a big one.
The same story, very similar story, I've heard in Dubai so many times already, that people burn out in their corporate job, and they start following their passion, their dream, and they suddenly start healing and feeling better.
Totally.
It's crazy to me how many people chase something they don't even want because they think they have to, because the society told them.
Yeah, and that was the same for me. Like, I was in the events industry, like, I enjoyed it, but what was behind that was I was an adrenaline junkie, because in the events industry I was chasing a high, like the high that you get after you finish a big event, and the high that you get when you get the praise from a client that you did an amazing job. And like, I was willing to buckle myself for that high, right? For that, like, affirmation, or from that, what's the word? You know what I'm trying to say, right?
I think so.
From that, like, acceptance or like praise or reward. And what I had to then do when I left the industry was understand where that pattern was coming from. Understand, and like, it's still something I live with all the time. I still can go into that pattern, right? But I now can see it in me, because like, running your own business, there's still a part of me that's like, whoa, I need to push harder, and I need to do this, and I need to buy into hustle mode. And then I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't, because that makes you sick, right? And it was like, what was behind it for me was this like sense of self, of like trying to prove myself that I'm not good enough unless I X, Y, and Z. And like, that buys into a lot of like inner child wound, emotional trauma stuff, and how we actually see ourselves. That's another huge piece of the puzzle.
So after you said you're on this journey, let's call it journey, 7 years.
I would say maybe, so I actually left my corporate job at the beginning of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's 3 years now, but all my physical symptoms, like, I spent 6 years struggling with acne, digestive issues, vaginal health issues, like all these sorts of things that were going on for me. My body was just like broken. And I spent 6 years going around in circles, working with like the top doctors in Australia and across the world. And they would look at me and be like, oh, we've never had a case like you before. And I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I was like, and I almost accepted it. And I was just like, okay, I'm just bound to live with these symptoms all the time. So I'll go on Roaccutane for my skin, or I'll go on like, use that proactive shit for my skin, or I'll do whatever. And I'll keep pushing, and I'll keep trying, and I'll keep putting more meds into me. And like, I had to kind of pull that back. I had to kind of unravel all of that sort of stuff and start from scratch.
So 3 years of healing,
Yeah, give or take. Then when I left my corporate job in 2020, I set out on a mission to heal my body in whatever way that I could. And I came at it from different angles, right? So this is kind of how my business was born, and how like my specific program was born. Was I was like, okay, cool. So I was like, I'm here right now. I'm burnt out to fuck. I've got all these symptoms. And I've got to try and figure out how to fix myself, because no one else is going to help me. So I went down the road of nutrition, but then I got hyper fixated on nutrition, and I became like obsessed with eating healthy. And I was there. Yeah, right. And I was just like, must never eat chocolate again, or whatever. And I just pulled myself into that hole, and my body still wasn't healing, because I was like, okay, well, I'm still getting these symptoms. Okay, nutrition's not doing it for me. So then I was like, well, fuck that, I'm going to go down another path. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go down the therapy path, right? Because I made the connection about emotional trauma, and I'm adopted, and I have a lot of unraveling of that to do with abandonment wounds and stuff like that. And so then I was like, right, I want to fix myself this way. And like, I was coming at it from the wrong angle, you know, because I was coming at it with this force, and I was like, okay, right, I'm going to go to loads of therapy, and I'm going to do hypnosis, and I'm going to do RTT, which is rapid transformational therapy, and I'm going to learn breath work, and I'm going to do yoga, and I'm going to blah. And then I was like, okay, head first into this. And I was like, well, I'm still seeing symptoms, so fuck that, right? And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to go down the road of like this lab testing stuff. And I was like, okay. And then I got some supplements and I started doing that. But it still wasn't fully coming. And then I realized I've got to do all of it. But I've got to do all of it from this like place of ease, from this place of like, stop trying to force my body to heal and like start actually nourishing it and loving it and like accepting that like you cannot undo, what was it, 7 years worth of treating my body like shit, probably way more than
probably
that.
the whole life.
My whole life, in the space of like 2 months, you know what I mean? Like, sorry, it doesn't work like that. So I'd say it took me the crux of about 6 months. So I got my lab results and I realized I had all these sorts of things, and I went on a 3-month protocol with the supplements, and I was on the dietary shifts, and then I leaned into my lifestyle and was like, okay, so there's gaps here with my lifestyle. Also, like, I was friends with people that only valued going out and getting hammered on the weekend, so I had to like let them go, and I had to then like try and find who I was. That was not this burnt out corporate who consistently went out at the weekend, binge drank, ate, you know, all sorts of things. I used to eat like probably 3 Mars bars at my desk every day to keep me awake because I was exhausted. Like my adrenal glands were destroyed. And so those 3 years were, it took me probably about 6 months before I saw some big shifts. And like, I still heal. I still fall out of balance. I still get flare-ups. But I know how to navigate them now, because I know that like stress is my biggest one. The biggest one. If you're stressed, hormones go, digestion goes, like it shuts down.
It's probably most of the people, they don't realize.
Totally.
Because it's connected to everything. The
Everything.
body responds to stress.
Totally. That's nervous system stuff. So like, but for me now, when I come at it from the place of like, if my body does get a flare up, I don't turn to it and be like, fuck you, body, blah, blah, blah. I don't blame it. I come at it from the sense of being like, yeah, actually, you know what? We're going through a lot right now. There's a lot of emotions floating around right now. It's heavy. So we're good. You know, I'm going to look after you. And I think when you come at it from that sort of shift and not like, oh my God, I got a spot, fuck me. Like, you know what I mean? I'm a horrible person because I should be more healed. It's like, well, no, actually what's going on in your world? And coming from that place of compassion is everything.
Compassion to yourself.
Compassion to myself. And also then like self-awareness of, okay, with this stressor, what else could I be doing to offset that? And that's why for me, like I do a lot of vagus nerve stuff, which is the nerve that taps into our rest and digest mode. So in the gut health world, like you gotta be digesting, right? And if you're not digesting, your food gets stuck, it leads to constipation, you can't poop, you feel like shit, blah, 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 blah. And the vagus nerve stuff, in the moment stuff, like I'm not talking about sitting and meditating for 5 hours a day. Like I'm talking about like fluff-free strategies where you're like, okay, this is actually how I biohack. This is actually how I hack my nervous system and bring myself back into balance, even in the moment. Like if I'll sit in my car and if I'm like, ooh yeah, get a bit stressed, like I'll hum because I'll stimulate my vagus nerve. Or I'll put my arms around myself and be like, yo Tia, you're safe. Everything's good. You're fine. It's like this, and I think a lot of women experience this as well, is like we're in autopilot mode a lot of the time. And we're so disconnected from our physical body. And when we can actually come back into our body, we realize that everything's actually working and everything is okay. And we come out of, we just breathe. We have a sigh of relief, right?
Right. I became quite huge on self-talk, especially since I started journaling last year, September. And only once I started journaling, I realized how negative my self-talk was.
Oh, yeah.
And I think even some research says that most of the people's thoughts are negative, and they are repeated every day, the same thoughts. But just by writing it down and then rereading it, to be aware how negative your self-talk is, how badly you think about yourself, that's crazy. And then trying to work on changing that, actively like catch yourself when your self-talk is destroying you. Like, wait, come on, like,
Yeah.
why can I not talk to myself like the best friend? Like, of course, you have to be tough on yourself too, but like, I love the quote that you should talk to yourself as the someone who you love, because so many people don't, and I used to not, and I'm still not all the time, but just to be aware of it and to try to like really support yourself when you need to. Like, you know, you have a best friend. If he goes through hard shit, you will be like, come on, you can do this. Like, you did it already. You can do it. But what do you say to yourself? You're like,
fuck you.
Fuck, you are such a loser again. Like, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And that affects your whole life. That affects your self-confidence. That affects the way how people see you, because the way you see yourself, people see you. It's just a like reflection, like a mirror. So,
totally. And that's one thing that like lately that you say that, like, one of my mentors and coaches, like, I will always stay tapped into these sorts of things and work with people. She basically, this was like the biggest mindset shift for me ever when it comes to like my thoughts, feelings, emotions and all that sort of stuff, is like, they're actually just experiences in the moment. They're actually not part of who we are. And she gave me this really simple hack, and I was like, oh my God, this just changed my world. It was like, whenever I feel like maybe I'm not doing good enough or whatever, whenever the self-talk comes in, I'll call it out. So I'll be like, okay, right now, I'm experiencing some anger, let's say, and I feel quite restricted, or feeling some frustration, and I feel quite restricted. But that's actually okay, because it's just a moment in millions, right? And when we can kind of come at it from that sense of like, and this might sound a bit woo, but I know you like a bit of woo, when we can come at it from the sense of like actually just letting the emotion and the feeling wash through us, as opposed to us attaching to it and accepting it as truth and being like, that's part of my identity. It's not. Like, none of it is. It's just, we're having an experience where we feel all these emotions, and these specific emotions, they don't last. They never last. So for me, from that mindset of whenever I have a spiral, I'm now in my head being like, hey, it's okay, because it's just a moment and it's just a feeling. And it's like, I've acknowledged that it's there. But then we have the ability to actually shift our energy. All right? So we then have this ability to insert something positive into that, so that then we could bring up our frequency a little bit more. So that's a practice that I've actually been trying to bring into my life lately. And it's so helpful, because it actually like makes me realize that these thoughts, I like to see them like clouds, you know, it's just like, just see you later, bye, you're not part of me. Who I identify with is not my anger or my sadness or my joy or my happiness or whatever. It's like, I'm just me. Yeah. And these are emotions.
They just come and go.
They just come and go.
It's exactly something I've been working on, and it's hard. It's but just
hard.
To be aware of it as a start and then work on it. Yeah, exactly. Like, you cannot, everybody's identifying with your thoughts, identifying with your feelings. And I tried to change the way I talk about it. It kind of works as a start. When you don't say I am angry, you say I feel angry.
Yes. I'm experiencing it. Yeah.
So you identify it as a feeling that's happening, but it's going to go, and not as like you are the feeling. And once you start doing that, you will start being more aware, and
totally
it helps. It's a little help, but it helps.
Totally. And like, even going back to like the gut health side of things, like, these are all things that drastically improve your gut. Because if you think about it in the sense of like, your gut is like your powerhouse. It's like your energy center. It's like your core. It's like when we can start to understand these little practices and techniques and start to put them into our lives, like, our gut health gets better, because all of these cells are listening to us. They're listening to how we speak to ourselves.
They are us.
They are us. And these gut bugs are part of us. And we get to nourish them, and they get to thrive when we also are thriving. You know what I mean? So like, coming at that from that place of compassion reduces that stress response in us, and then the body's able to do what it needs to do. So I feel like for so many people, like, stress is the biggest cause of like gut imbalances and symptoms and all those sorts of things. So that's a big part of what I do. And it's so funny because people come into my world and they think, oh, I'm just going to do a poo test and get some supplements and away you go. And I'm like, sit your ass down.
You are in for a treat.
I'm like, let's talk about what happened in your world. Like,
so do you have any therapists as a part of your business?
Yes, we have a hypnotherapist and an RTT specialist. So she is part of our top tier one-on-one program. So it's me. So I'm obviously a coach, yoga meditation teacher, and then she's a hypnotherapist, and then we have the functional nutritionists. So I have two of them, and what's lovely is they're all around the world. So we work with people all over the world, and we bring them in when we need, because there are some clients that, like, you know, we've done the cleanses and they've had the chats with me, and there's still a part that they're missing, and I'm like, that's trauma. That is trauma in your body that is stored, that needs to be released. So then we'll bring her in and she'll do like a 2.5 hour deep dive subconscious reprogramming for them, so they can actually release some of these things that are keeping them stuck. Because that's the thing, it's like, even this trauma that we experienced when we were kids, like, it's still in our subconscious, and there's still this underlying level of like nervous system activation where we're on edge, like, and I think that's a really big thing that needs to be talked about and acknowledged and worked on.
So you have a hypnotherapist.
Yes.
That's a part. But do you have any psychotherapist that provides like full-on therapy sessions?
Talk therapy? No. I love the idea of talk therapy, but I sometimes feel like it doesn't get to the root of it. Whereas that's the reason why I wanted hypnotherapy, to go straight into the subconscious. Because sometimes, and this was based on my own experience, sometimes with talk therapy, we can over-rationalize it in our head, and we can just go down a rabbit hole sometimes, when sometimes what we need to do is just go back to the scene of the crime in our brains and like process what happened. And that's where I've seen huge transformational shifts for me, because like that was what caused the onset of all my issues, all my health issues, was a traumatic event with my birth mom. And that, then I buried it, went back to Australia, because I was living in Australia at the time. This was when I was 24. And so yeah, like 9 years ago, that triggered so much in me, and almost a sense of like, I don't know where the fuck I belong, you know, because like her mom passed away and I went along to the funeral, and I was at the back of the church with my adopted mom, watching my biological family bury my biological grandmother, who I didn't really know. And so this whole sense of like dissociation, I was like, sorry, where do I fit in? You know what I mean? And so then like I had a nervous breakdown, a complete nervous breakdown. And so that was a really big part of like understanding the layers of the nervous system. And for me, I had been in talk therapy and I wasn't seeing the shifts, so I needed to go deeper. And I actually went into some sessions where I like rebirthed myself.
I've heard about it, yeah.
Yeah. So there's all these sorts of modalities that are there to help in different levels. Some are good for people, some aren't good for people. So, but I like to go straight to the root of it, because I think the root of it is usually in the subconscious.
Yeah. So you think that's where all your physical issues were coming from?
I think it was the trigger, because I think what happened was, like, the trigger happened, stress came into play, then I started eating badly, then I started drinking more, because I was like self-sabotaging myself, because I hadn't jumped into and acknowledged what had happened. So like that onset of stress then caused a whole domino effect in terms of how I was showing up. Like I then was just burying myself in work because I didn't want to feel, and I never stopped. So I became addicted to stress. I became addicted to like distraction. And I think that it's always a specific trigger, an emotional trigger that can hijack us, that then leads us to a whole heap of like habits and stuff that cause us problems.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. It was for me anyway, and it usually is for my clients. It's the first question I ask them is, when did all your gut issues start and what was going on in your world. And then it's like, okay, let's work backwards.
It's like a detective.
Yeah, I am like senior detective. Senorita, I should say,
CSI.
right?
CSI Dubai.
Literally. Yeah.
Do you think there is anything that's missing in your approach? When you said you have like pillars that you work with, it's like lab test, hypnotherapy. Do you think there is anything missing there?
So our approach is like, we 5 pillars: lab testing, mindset work, diet, lifestyle, and nervous system. So I kind of think they're the 5 pillars of health.
So when it comes to exercise, is it
Yeah,
involved
that's
in
involved in lifestyle. 100,
Okay.
like exercise, everything.
Yeah.
Exercise.
So do you
is
also
huge.
have someone who recommends the clients what to do, how to exercise, or you just tell them?
No.
Just keep
so
moving.
yeah, no. So what I would do is because all my clients are women, I will talk to them about the different levels of exercise that we need in our cycle. Because at certain phases of our cycle, if we, let's say right before we're due our period, if we're doing high intensity workouts, we're actually causing a lot more stress on our body, and that's then can be a trigger for PMS. So I will basically support them in whatever exercise or movement that they want to do, but like, I'm not a PT, like, and I'm not going to go down that road. But like, I also give a lot of power to my clients to also go and explore things and see what they like to do and what works for their specific body as well.
I guess that gives them power too, because you cannot just take their hand and do everything for them.
No, and like that's also the thing. It's like all the women that come into my world are self-led. It's like, because like when I first started my business, I was taking on clients that weren't, and that were expecting me to fix them, and that then does not lend itself to any growth or transformation or anything like that. But now the women that are in my world, like, they're ready, and they're just like, show me what needs to be done, and then I'm like, go fly, and go do what you need to do, and I'll be there and I'll be here. And that's very much how I like to work, is like, it's not my journey, I'm going on my own journey, you go with yours and I stand by you. And I have a toolkit, and I have like the experts in our programs to be able to support you with where you're at, but it's their journey, and they ultimately have to walk that path to figuring out, ooh, okay, this food works for me, or this supplement works for me, or maybe it doesn't. Ooh, I liked this, or I don't like to meditate, but I like to run, or do you know what I mean? Like those sorts of things. So it's their own empowered journey, and we hold it for them. We hold the space for them. We have the tools for them, and we walk alongside them.
Why do you work only with women?
It's a personal preference. It's a personal preference because I know what it's like to be a woman. I wouldn't want to, like, I don't really know how men work. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know the depths of that as well. I don't know how men think. I don't know, but I know how women think. And so for me, I find it actually a lot easier to go to the depths of stuff with women. Yeah, so it's a personal preference.
Okay, makes sense. Because you went through the journey, so you
Yeah.
can apply everything you learned. That's what your business is
Totally.
about.
Totally. Like, and yeah, it's a real self-discovery piece for women. And also there's an unraveling of like, women need to take up more space. Women need to find their voice, because that's like the empowerment journey just as much as the gut health journey. They kind of intermingle. And from a perspective of men, I feel like, yeah, I don't know, personal preference, I guess.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, what do you think about medical medium?
Oh,
Let's go.
you know what I did his liver cleanse. Where all I ate was bloody Brussels sprouts and asparagus for like 10 days. It actually broke me. Like, my hormones were probably the worst I've ever been, because like we basically, so Zave, my partner, did it with me, and like he was good, like he was sweet, because like he doesn't have the same hormones as me, right? But for me, like taking out protein and taking out fats and just eating greens, like I lost a shed load of weight, and like I'm already a teeny tiny person. I was exhausted, and I actually didn't feel like it was helping me at all. Like I did it because I found the book. Like this was before I ended up finding like the poop tests and all that sort of stuff. So this was like, oh my God, this is going to heal me. I'm going to do this 10-day cleanse and everything will be amazing. And I, at the end of it, like, no joke, like my hormones were destroyed. Like I had like the worst menstrual cycle of my entire life after that, because like I had no protein, I had no fats, I had no nothing. My body was so out of balance. So I think that while his principles work for some people, and this is the thing, like some people love to fast. I would die if I fasted, you know what I mean? Some people work well on vegan diets. I don't work well on vegan diets anymore, you know what I mean? Like it's personal preference, but like for me, no thank you. Medical medium, no thank you. But I am a fan of like supporting the liver, like because the liver is everything. And some of his principles in terms of like the foods and the supplements to eat, yeah, great. But his like 12 day fast or cleanse where you wean yourself off food, oh fuck. Like I could not. And like even Zave says to me, he's like, Jesus, don't ever make me do that again. So it depends, but I definitely use some of the principles that he uses, and like the herbs and stuff that he uses are great, I think. Yeah.
Do you think there is one universal diet that can be good for everyone? You know, now you have, not only now, you have all these movements, vegan, raw meat, keto, whatever, there is a shitload of them.
You know, I was actually thinking about this last night, because I'm actually going to make a little mini course called Easy AF Eats, right? Which is literally just going to be, I think we're all so goddamn confused about what we should and shouldn't eat. I really do. And I think everybody's gone down this road of like, oh, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to go on keto. And then as soon as they come off it, they put all the weight back on. Like, yeah, of course you do. Because you're not losing it in a sustainable way. And I think we have to move, I actually think we have to move away from this diet culture and move into just like, let's just nourish ourselves with good food. Like literally, that's all it needs to be. Super simple. Yeah, that would be kind of my take. And also like I know that the Mediterranean style diet, there's something called the blue zones, which are places in the world that have people that are in their hundreds, 100-year-old, and they are thriving still. And like that predominantly plant-based diet with, you know,
a little bit of fish sometimes.
Fish sometimes. Also, like if you're gonna eat meat, like the size of the palm of your hand, it should be what we should be having. We should not be having like 50 steaks. Like we should not be, like, we overeat meat massively. But if we wanna have meat in our diet, then we need to work towards like a small amount and then load up on plant-based proteins, you know, so your lentils, your chickpeas, stuff like that. Tahini, yum, so good. Things like that so that we're still meeting the requirements that we need in terms of protein, but we're not just like hammering down burgers.
Yeah.
So I think there's a big movement in that as well at the moment, of people shifting, hopefully, into eating vegetables that sustain us and that our gut bugs love and that, you know, make us happy, because these gut bugs, like literally with certain types of fiber and certain types of food, like these gut bugs eat them up and they produce something called short chain fatty acids, which then help prevent chronic diseases and help prevent colon cancer and all these sorts of things. So it's like, let's feed these fuckers, you know what I mean? Let's stop starving them and eating shit, and let's just move into creating a life where we're eating good food that's easy. So I say sod all the diets, to be honest, and just lean into nourishing your body. Like, your body has an innate wisdom for what it needs. How can we learn to listen to it?
Yeah, we are very disconnected.
Very.
My take on this is to try to figure out quote unquote diet that you can sustain for your whole life. So you're not looking at like, oh, I want to lose weight in the next 2 months. You're looking at like, can I eat like this until I'm 90?
Totally.
And if the answer is no, then probably
Totally.
you shouldn't do it.
Totally. And this is, like, I think this is what grinds my gears a little bit about, like, the fitness industry, is like, calorie deficit is the only way that you're going to lose weight. Like, I don't believe that.
It's the only way to lose weight short term.
Short term.
Exactly.
Whereas, and my clients lose weight. Like, sometimes clients of ours, like, it falls off them because the majority of the time it's inflammation in their body. Their body is physically inflamed because of what's going on in their body. It's full of toxins. So if you think about it in the sense as well, like, I had a client who was overweight, right? And we ran her tests and she had a shitload of mold in her body, like through the roof. And like, she came to me and she was like, Tia, I exercise all the time, I eat really clean, and I'm in a calorie deficit, but I can't lose weight. And I'm like, no shit, you can't lose weight because you have mold overgrowing in your body, and your body is toxic as fuck, and your body is inflamed, therefore it's holding on to everything. And so then when you come at it from the sense of like, I'm just going to start reducing the toxins in my body, and I'm going to learn how to eat in a way that's not filled full of like, because this is the thing, like, sometimes people, what drives me wild is like, they're like, here's a sweet treat that's like 100 calories, but it's like loaded with shit. And I'm like, can we stop preaching to people to eat this, you know, high protein cheesecake thing or whatever, or protein bar that's like only 50 calories, but it contains 500 fucking teaspoons of sugar. You know what I mean? Like, those sorts of things, like, or several different chemicals, or all these things that are disrupting and turning on inflammation in the body. I get really riled up about this if you can't tell. And like, how can we just move into an anti-inflammatory diet? Because that in itself is helping the body to reduce inflammation. It's also helping the body to come back into balance in that space of homeostasis. And that in itself is reducing weight, because then your body is focusing, can actually focus on burning what it doesn't need because it's been fed really good food and it's not inflamed anymore. So for me, that would be my view on it.
What would you say to people who tell you, but I want to enjoy life?
But I want
I want to enjoy life. I don't want to restrict myself.
I know. It's hard. I think when it comes to stuff like that, it's like, are you actually enjoying life if you're eating like shit all the time? How is your body coping? Like, if you're someone who can eat whatever the hell you want and not be at risk for chronic diseases and not have any digestive issues, skin issues, brain fog issues, any symptoms, by all means, go for it. But the reality of it is like, how can you fall in love with food that loves you back? Like, I don't restrict myself. If I want a piece of cake, I'll have a piece of cake. But I'll do it in a way that's my 20%. You know what I mean? But my 80%, probably even 90%, 90-10. My 90% is like eating really delicious food that I absolutely love and that I don't feel restricted in. So like, I would challenge someone's mindset in that sense. And I would be like, okay, how can you fall in love with food that actually makes you feel good? Because that is, otherwise you're going to end up later in life sick. You're going to end up with a chronic disease. You're going to end up with diabetes, or you're going to end up with something.
You will eventually pay for it.
And you will it catches up on us. Regardless, it catches up on us. And it's like, what I do now is for the future version of myself. So what I eat now, and the practices I put into place now, and the lifestyle that I have, and the things that I do, and the purpose that I live, is shaping my future self.
long-term thinking.
Long-term.
Yeah, I look at it the way that, like, is this food giving me energy or is it taking energy from
Totally.
me? And then also, we live in times when instant gratification is the highest thing, and everybody's chasing the high right now.
I know.
And yeah, that's not the way to go.
No.
You have to think long term.
I totally
Like
agree.
short-term decisions will bring you short-term results.
Totally. And I think that's what like makes me so sad, because there's so many people out there that are offering these quick fix things, you know, and
Always will
offering
be.
weight loss in, you know, transformation and whatever. And then there's people like me and my team that are like, we're not going to fix you in like a week. We're not going to fix you full stop. You're going to fix you, but we're going to help you, you know, and you're going to heal at your own pace, and you're going to get there. And you're finally going to see long-term results. Like, I have clients that are like, you've changed my entire life. I will never think the same, you know, like, or my whole family have shifted now. It's like the ripple effect, right? And when you do that, like, that is the magic. That really is why we're here, is to create something sustainable long-term that feeds our soul and our body and our everything on so many different levels.
Is there one tip you would give to someone who's struggling with gut issues, but they don't want to go into that yet? They don't want to do any lab testing, anything. Is there one thing you would tell, like, okay, if you don't want to do any of that, just start with this?
I would start with stress. To be quite honest, I would start with nervous system, because if you start to learn how to tap into that rest and digest mode, your body will do a lot of the work by itself. So like belly breathing, vagus nerve stimulation, those sorts of things will be key. And if I can add another one, eat more vegetables. Because that in itself will help your body come back into balance massively.
What's your vision for what you do long term?
Oh my gosh.
Do you have a vision where you see yourself 5 years, 10 years? What would you like to achieve with what you do?
Like for me, like the goal is public speaking.
You've done a few
Yeah.
events, right?
For me, like, that's my bread and butter. Like, for me, I actually want to inspire people to go on this journey and to take their power back and to start reclaiming their health and to start making a move. Nice plug.
There you go.
Making a move towards something long-term that's sustainable, you know. That's kind of what I see happening in the future, is for me to be able to break away a little bit from the day-to-day stuff and have amazing coaches in play and people experts that I trust that can help and guide people, and for me to go out and spread this message of we have to start looking after our gut, because that is the highway to everything. And so if I can do that, and if I can fly that flag and get people to start taking this shit seriously and looking at their shit and understanding their shit, like physically and metaphorically, then yeah, I will be a very happy woman.
I admire you for this, because I admire everyone who went through shit, went through their journey, whatever it was, and then they decide that they learned so much, it changed their life so much, that they just have a inner need to pass it on other people, and they have the need to spread it. And I think that's what you are doing. And I admire it, because it takes courage.
Thank you.
And it takes shitloads of effort.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it makes you fulfilled, I believe, because you feel like you are working on something that's being given to you, and you have to spread it.
Totally.
Further.
It's my purpose. Like, why would I hold on to the roadmap? I want to share that roadmap so other people can walk it. Like, that's that's how I see it. And everything is for the greater good, you know? And like every little life that I touch, be it one person, be it 50 people, be it 100 people, if I can just shift their mindset in some way, then I'm going to die a happy woman.
Done. So where can people find you if they want to look for you?
So usually Instagram, you'll find me dancing on reels to poo things.
Do you show people how you poop?
I don't show people how to poop.
Not yet.
You can find me at Tia_gut coach or Tia Maher. That's TIAMAHER.com. Or my podcast is Reclaiming Health. That's where people can find me.
You post weekly, you said?
Yes, my podcast is weekly, and I talk a lot about like my own story, a lot about things that will shift people's mindset, you know, tips on tricks on looking after your gut, and then I bring other guest experts in as well to dive deep into different aspects of healing.
Perfect. Is there anything else you would like to tell to millions of people who are listening?
Hi, millions of people. No, I'm good. Thanks for listening, and I hope you learned loads.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.